Hi and welcome into the trappiest opening trap against the London system. This is really one of my favorite variations because in this case you literally set a trap almost all along the way, nearly at every turn, maximizing your chances of winning. But first of all, what is the London system? It's a very popular chess opening for white, and it's not really an opening variation, more of a setup, where white usually plays their bishop out to f4, and after that, regardless of what you do, they play something like pawn e3, and then in the future, again, after some moves, white continues with this pyramid of pawns and they play pawn to c3. And this temple-like pawn structure is the main characteristics of the London system. It usually secures white against any early attacks of black, but not today. Here's what we are going to do. If you know that your opponent is about to play the London system, and usually they will play this move bishop to f4, you play the move pawn to c5. Attacking the center and also preparing for your queen early jump, taking advantage of the fact that white abandoned that pawn on b2 and you want to attack it. So after c5, of course, there are a couple things white can do. Very often they'll play a symmetric response pawn c3, just trying to provide enough defense for the central pawn, and you play this move out queen to b6, putting pressure onto this pawn, kind of saying that white developed their bishop prematurely, and also simultaneously you're putting some pressure to white's center. In this case, there are a couple of things that white could possibly do here. They need to somehow keep guarding these both pawns. Usually they'll play their queen out either to c2 or b3. Let's start off with the move queen to c2. Now you take on d4. Now this pawn is a little bit weak because white left it undefended while moving their queen away. So after pawn takes d4, this pawn is actually hanging, but you just don't need to overlook that white is also threatening queen takes c8 checkmate. Therefore, we don't grab the pawn first, we play knight to c6. And now that's a real threat, therefore it has to play pawn e3 to defend the pawn. And now you play pawn d6, threatening pawn e5, the central attack in the middle of the board, attacking this pawn, attacking the bishop. From c6, maybe your knight is ready to jump to b4 and hit the queen at some point. Therefore, you can see that basically at every move you start creating some threats, and white already has a chance to go wrong and to miss the mark and, to overlook one of your threats. Now, in order to stop this move pawn e5, your opponents will usually play knight to f3, thinking that they are in control. They're controlling the square 3 times. You can't play e5, but you say, hey, not today, and we still play the move pawn e5. Hitting the bishop, hitting the pawn, therefore white is forced to trade over here on e5, and now we're at a crossroad. I'm going to share with you two ways to win against a chess nerd and against a chess noob. Let's start with the chess noob. If your opponent is a casual chess player, he'll probably take over here on e5, and after that, queen a5 wins the game. So that's just a double attack over here and over here. So if white somehow covers the king, you're about to win this knight, and you win the game. If white says, hey, let's trade queens, let's play queen to c3, let's trade queens, you say, hey, I'm all for the trade, but I'm going to trade it for a bishop, and you win anyway. If somehow your opponent managed to calculate all that and figure out that he can take on e5, he'll probably go bishop g5, thinking that his position is still fine, he's threatening to take over here, but here's how you win against a chess nerd. You play the move bishop f5. Another beautiful way to win. You hit the queen, deflecting it from the defense of this weakness on b2. And after that, we take over here on b2. And after that, you win the rook. And the rook can't obviously go away, therefore you literally win it. Moreover, there is a very annoying threat of bishop coming over here to b4, hitting white's king. So the king is also in danger, which gives you a completely winning game. Alright, let's explore other options of white here. By the way, if you aren't very familiar with the London system, I would highly recommend you to watch my other video where it's a more basic video. I just cover all of the basics of this opening, all the common ideas, plans, setup for white, for black, etc. You can check this out later by clicking the link below the video. For now, let's just continue with the card variation. How do we crush the London system? Now we're still attacking this pawn after we just played queen to b6. We have seen that queen c2 did not bring white very satisfactory results. Another common move of white is queen b3, just trying to neutralize your pressure and trying to trade queens. In this case, we take here on d4. Once again, this pawn is weak since white left it. Now we potentially can win it. If white just, automatically recaptures, you just win a pawn. If not, white has to trade queens first. Queen takes, pawn takes d4. And, although at first, of course, it feels like the position has simplified, you opened up a file for your rook, which is still nice, and it gives you some ideas. You play knight c6, hitting this pawn, and after white defends it somehow, either with a knight or with a pawn, you continue with the move knight to b4, threatening knight c2 fork. Also, it attacks this pawn on a2. For example, if white tries to cover this c2 square by playing king to d1, you can actually take over here with a knight, which not only wins a pawn, but also creates another interesting threat along the way. If white doesn't notice your threat and they play some normal development move, such as knight f3, you have a really powerful discover check knight to c3. Discover attacks, you check to the king, and you attack this rook over here. Therefore, in the next move, you pick up the rook with your own one, and you win the game. If white does not overlook this tactic, well, at the very least, you're a pawn up, which is, not the end of the world for white. White's position is decent, but still, normally in an opening as black, you're expected just to neutralize, so you're already overperforming. And here is a bonus tip. How do you beat that chess nerd, that chess friend of yours or relative who's just a fairly advanced player and who always finds the way to shut down your plans, your attacks in an opening? So here, after white played queen to b3, we know that we take advantage of this weakness, we trade. If white doesn't want to lose the pawn, they have to trade queens over here, pawn takes. And now, in the previous variation, we analyzed that if white captures over here, you have this unpleasant maneuver with your knight, which is, not completely winning, but still creates some problems for white. If your opponent can foresee that somehow, he may think to himself, okay, let me just trade this knight off first, and after that, after rook takes, I'm gonna then recapture with a completely safe position. So how do you beat that advanced, annoying guy? In that case, you play an in-between move, pawn takes c3, so that you say, hey, I'm gonna win a pawn first, and only then I'm gonna take back the bishop. But your opponent at this point will think, hey, I understand you want to take over here and then take the rook, it's all good, but what if I just play bishop e5? I'm saving my bishop, I'm taking control in this diagonal, and I'm just a piece up. Against that annoying friend of yours, you've got a winning shot, which is a move rook to a2. An extremely satisfying move to play. You sacrifice a rook in an endgame, because after rook takes a2, you play another calm move, pawn to c2, and this little pawn move wins the game, because white can't stop you from playing either pawn to c1, promoting queen and delivering a checkmate, or pawn takes b1, also promoting a queen and winning the game. And white just can't stop that. It's a really beautiful combo. And now I've got a little challenge for you. In this position, besides white's move pawn to c3, there's another move which is slightly less common, but still quite popular, is the move knight to f3, just developing a knight and also protecting this pawn. And after this exchange in the middle of the board, there is a winning move for black, and funnily enough, this position was played in thousands of games. Lots of strong players play this position as white, overlooking black's winning shot. And the winning move for black is only the third most played move in this position. Therefore, a ton of people could not find the winning move, but it is your task. Please think about this. If you can find the winning move for black, write it down in the comments below. There's one more thing that white may try doing against you. Since they noticed that you did not play your pawn to d5, white may think to himself, hey, I'm gonna grab the space and play pawn d5 myself. In this case, you still play all the same move, queen b6, hitting this pawn. And once again, you give white a chance to go around and to blunder their central pawn. If they try queen c1, defending the pawn that way, then they're just blundering this pawn over here on d5 and you win it. So that's nice. Let's take it back. Let's say white does not blunder, and they instead play pawn to b3, just trying to defend this pawn. Then you also have a fairly funny variation which wins this central pawn anyway. It's the move queen to b4 check. This is check to the king and attack of this bishop over here to f4. And if white plays something, you also keep in mind that you want to pick up this pawn. So for example, if queen to d2, you just take this pawn and you win it, because notice that this queen is pinned, therefore it can't move. If I play something else, let's say they go bishop to d2, that still doesn't help. You play queen d4, and this time it's a double attack to the rook and the pawn over here. If white does whatever, you just take this pawn. In most cases, they recapture over here, you just take, and you're a pawn up at the end of this forcing line. So what's really cool about this variation is that you keep creating different threats all along the way, and white can always go wrong, and one little inaccuracy can already cost white a game. Of course, there can be something else that white can try playing against you. I've got another video where I've covered a very similar opening variation. I would recommend that you check it out by clicking over there, because lots of videos are really very similar to this one. Also, if you want to become a strong positional player overall, this free masterclass will help you to lay down a firm foundation, teaching you all that you need in order to become a really good positional player. Hope that you enjoyed this one. Talk soon. Take care.